Waiting is over. Waiting is over. We will start. We are starting our international part, and well, you've seen some 15 minutes of different classical episodes of Eric and Mark Traphagen, and now we have two of them live, two of them in the same presentation live. I think it's great. I personally love all of this stuff, and I have to be honest, I've never seen them doing a live show together. We've done with Eric a few things, but with Mark and Eric at the same time, well, it should be classic. Okay, Mark, Eric, how are you doing, guys, today?
Yeah, good to see you, Anton.
Yeah, okay, great. Well, we're a little bit out of schedule, but it doesn't matter. I'm so glad you can make it today, and I'm so glad, yeah, with Eric, we've done a couple of things with you. Mark, yeah, well, two of you, same time, live, great. It's all yours.
Great. Awesome. And we're going to let Mark start the show here today, and talk about why social media is not a direct ranking factor. And then after that, I'm going to talk about how it does impact SEO. So that's our plan.
So just a time check, since we got a little late start here, Anton. Are we still looking to end at 1:15?
Minutes to go, hopefully 5 minutes.
All right, we're just going to have to move quickly. So we'll get right into it here. So as Eric introduced, I'm Mark Traphagen. I'm the Senior Director of Marketing for Stone Temple Consulting. Got all those things correct. Now, what I'm going to be talking about in the first part of this is just why we know that social media is not a direct ranking signal. So we're going to start with kind of the negative. We're going to move to the more positive about how, with Eric, on how you should be using social media to influence search results as well. So starting right off the bat, a good deal of people probably still assume that social media is a ranking signal for Google and for other search engines. And when you think about just out of a common sense approach, that seems to make a certain amount of sense, because you would think it's a signal, it's coming from real people, that's got to have some value, right? So we're going to look at some tests. We're going to run through very quickly here some studies that we did. And by the way, I'll just note that everything that I'm sharing today, I have set up tweets in advance, and those tweets are going out on the hashtag SMM Day. So social media marketing day, hashtag SMM Day. They're going out every 5 minutes during this hour. So everything that I'm mentioning, you can get there, or just watch my Twitter feed at Mark Traphagen on Twitter. So starting right off, like, the assumption is that social media does affect it. So first thing we did is, over the last couple of years, we've done a number of studies of the major social media networks and actually set up tests to see, can we get them to affect the search results, as people assume that they do. So let's start with Facebook, since that's the biggest social network. We did a test of that, and it's getting a little old now. It was in late 2013, but everything we've done in kind of anecdotal testing ever since seems to confirm that if the percentages aren't exactly the same, the main conclusion of that is that Facebook is indexed by Google, but only a small percentage of the posts, the billions of posts that go out on Facebook, a small percentage ever make it into the Google index. By being indexed, that means that you can find those posts on Google if you do a search that would bring them up. So just to give the exact figures, we looked at 40 posts each from 85 different highly influential Facebook profiles. So we were dealing with the top of the cream of the crop here on Facebook. These are, if anybody should be indexed their posts by Google, you would think it would be these profiles. So we found that after a month, we could only find 60% of those in the index. That's a majority, that's great, but 40% were not indexed. And we continued, we looked at posts that were 6 months old, a year old. To sum it all up, at the end of the day, we never on the whole found more than 60% of anyone's posts being indexed by Facebook. So just keep that in mind. That's our first bookmarker, that Google is not, even though maybe they could, they are not spending the resources to index everything that's on Facebook. So keep that in mind. So let's look at Twitter. Now, most of our audience may be aware that about a year ago, Google renewed its direct deal with Twitter, which gives Google full access now, what they call the fire hose access. So they get all the tweets in real time if they want. So again, if there were a social network that was being fully indexed, you would think it would be Twitter. So we tested that. And our test, and again, you can see all of these if you go hashtag SMMDay. I'm tweeting them out over this hour. You can go and see those studies on your own. But our test showed that we tested last year. We took a snapshot of a great deal of tweets before and after the launch of the Google deal to do a comparison. Before the Google Twitter deal went in, we saw we could only find about 0.4%, so less than half of 1% of the tweets that we were looking at could we find on Google after 7 days. Afterward, it went up to about 3.4%. Now that's a 460% increase somewhat, but it's still very small. 3.6% of the tweets were found. So again, for Twitter. All right, let's move on to Google+. That was the network we're testing because that's Google's own network. We know Google sees everything on Google+, right? What we tested there was not whether things would get indexed, because we found very quickly that, as many people know, yes, Google+ gets thoroughly indexed. It showed, if you do the right search, you're going to find eventually any Google+ post probably pretty much on Google. Also, we found that it was a fast way to get your posts indexed. We confirmed that. So if you put something out on Google+, it'll get indexed by Google. But are those posts influencing search results? So what we tested here with Google+ was links. We planted on a number of sites some very unique content pages, and we kept them very protected and isolated. So there were no signals. Google had no way of finding out that these pages existed. And then after they sat for a little while, we posted them on Google+. Well, that got them indexed. So now Google knew they existed. Now we began to watch over a period of weeks to see what happened with the ranking of those posts. Because a lot of people assume, like if you link to something on Google+, it boosts the ranking of the post. We even did another segment where we had a number of very highly influential Google+ users reshare those posts and reshare those links. Bottom line was we found no discernible result in rankings effect. So Google+ gets you indexed, but it doesn't necessarily reflect ranking. Now, with my remaining time, let me go, because I want to get to Eric, because he's going to give you the really useful stuff. I'm here to clear
out. He's the negative guy.
I'm the negative guy.
I'm the positive guy, just for the record.
I'm all this. Eric's all this. But I'm here to do the laundry, clean out the myths, get those out of our heads so that Eric can get you the real meat. Okay, so just concluding, why? Why wouldn't Google be using these networks as direct thing? Well, the first thing would be, as I saw with Facebook and Twitter, and we can probably assume most of the other social networks, they are not indexing all of these. So it's an incomplete signal. It's just such a huge resource. It changes so rapidly that they don't even bother. Now they're increasing the amount that they especially on Twitter, the amount that they index, but it's still not complete. So an incomplete signal is a dangerous thing for Google. If they're not seeing all the influences, they might be getting a wrong impression. Google engineers are going to be aware of that. And then, just as I mentioned a moment ago, it changes so rapidly. Matt Cutts brought this out in a video that I'm tweeting out my post about. It just changes so rapidly that you can't be sure, like, what's popular one day, is it unpopular the next? Or if an influencer likes something today, he might dislike it tomorrow. That's really hard to track. And then finally, it's hard to identify profiles. Google Plus, probably one of the main reasons Google Plus existed, was an attempt by Google to set up a system where they hoped, of course, a lot more people would use it than did, that they would have verified profiles and verified identities. But for other social networks, they don't have access to that information. They can't be sure that everyone is who they say they are. And so unlike with web pages, it's a lot harder to really nail down, is this profile really authoritative? Is it really someone we should be listening to? So end of the day is, it's a lot harder job than people think. It's a lot more confusing signal. It doesn't mean that Google or other search engines won't ever use it as a direct signal. They may be able in the future to figure out a better way to do it, but for right now, it doesn't look like it is. So I'm going to hand it off now to Eric, who's going to tell you that it's not all bad news. There's good news. There are things that you should be doing on social media that will have an effect on your SEO. Eric?
Okay, so bad news, you step to the side. Good news, we'll step to the front. Here I am. So there we go. I'm the thumbs up guy. Thanks, Mark. That was great. So Yeah, I agree. Our studies have shown that there isn't a lot of evidence that it's used as a direct ranking factor. I want to clarify one thing. Social media might be used by, and is used by, search engines to discover new content. So you will see evidence of that. And what we're saying and what Mark's been saying is that, it isn't a way to directly boost the rankings of existing content, I think is sort of the key point. But just so to expand upon this little though, social media can be used to help drive your SEO. And it's a matter of the strategy and how you think about doing that. So I'm going to share a little bit of data first, which actually supplement what Mark's saying, but will lead us to where we get to where social media becomes so powerful. And that is that there's data out there that shows that there's a very weak correlation between social shares of a piece of content and links to a piece of content. And at the same time, there's also a very weak correlation, in fact, no correlation between social shares and read time. And so what this leads us to is that a lot of what's true with social media is what people share isn't what inspires them or what they really engage with and adds a lot of value. What I'm doing is I'm drawing data from a Moz BuzzSumo study, but what they did is they also looked at certain kinds of content to figure out what types of content did get both social shares and lots of links. That's the sweet spot for social media and SEO right there. And they found two kinds of content worked really well. One was data-driven research studies. Those do fantastic in terms of getting both a large amount of social shares and lots of links. So for reference, we did a study on Google's mobile update last year, and we ended up getting, I think, a few thousand social shares, pretty good in our market space, and about 2,700 links to that same piece of content. So data-driven studies work really well. The other thing that works really well is opinion-forming journalism. And so that's kind of a loaded sentence. I want you to think about this a little bit, because the opinion-forming journalism piece only works if the people out there care about your opinion and you've established yourself as an expert in a given market space. And if you've been able to do that, then people will place a lot of weight on your opinion, and you'll start to get a connection in social shares and links as well. So that's the first thing I want to get you, is that there are two ways that you can create strong value and correlation between your social shares and getting links to your content. But that's only part of the mechanics, really. The next thing to realize is, how do you get that to happen? Because it isn't just that you publish this great content and people will magically discover it and start sharing it. The next piece of the puzzle is that you have to have built the relationships in your marketplace so that people care about your opinion or trust you and believe that you're a source of good information. And this is one of the big keys to how to use social media. Social media is a wonderful way to create a lot of engagement and interaction with other people who are in your market space. And how do you do that? Well, you follow them. I'll use Twitter as an example, but it applies to any social network. So you might follow them on Twitter. You see when they tweet something, you retweet posts of theirs that they like. You might reply to some things and have discussions with them. You might, and outside of social media, you might be reading their blog posts, articles they write, interacting with them, sharing that content, doing the kinds of things that you would naturally do to build the relationship. Now, if you do that really well with influential people in a market space, you start building your reputation with them. You start building your reputation with the people they follow. And on top of that, now you do some really good opinion-forming journalism or some really nice data-driven research, and those people become likely to share your content, right? And that can lead to links. And this is where you get to the synergy that I believe you're always looking for, which is you share really good content on your social media. It's very good for your social media feed, and it helps, create new followers. And then people in the social media stream see the great content. They may reshare it. And some of them may have their own blogs or be media people, and they might write about it and link to it. And now what's happening is that social media shares are helping generate links from real world websites, and it drives your SEO in a wonderful way. So that's sort of the way that we make it work for us at Stone Temple Consulting. When we publish content here, it's really the only way we promote it is we share it on social media, and we get things that get thousands of links and ranks very highly. If you want to have fun, search for Gary E-ish keynote, and you'll see that Stone Temple events rule the rankings for that.
Even though Gary's spoken at keynotes at many major conferences.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, but we use social media and promotion that way to be very effective. So I'm going to cut it off there because I want to allow some time for questions from the audience.
You're not going to share a screen or whatever, is change your plan or something?
Oh, well, I mean, sure. I'll be happy to share a quick screen for you. Sorry. I just, because we were a little short on time, I wanted to make sure we had, okay. I'll share a screen and we will throw that into, okay. So there we go. So here's the screen that I was planning on showing. So the idea here is you have to think about this whole environment as an ecosystem, right? So you can publish great content on your site, like I talked about, opinion-informing journalism or data-driven studies, or you can publish it off-site by, guest posts or higher-end content on major sites. And your goal with this content strategy needs to be to build relationships with these people over on the right of the screen. Certainly your target audience that I have in the middle there, influencers as I show in the bottom, or media and bloggers as I show on the top. And social media and PR and outreach are all just strategies to reach those people. So this really gets back to how you should think about the role of social media here is it's a channel to create connection and to build relationships that brings higher levels of value back to the business. So that was the screen that I had in mind, giving you a quick share off there.
If Google counts social signals, and Google said, no, we don't count this stuff. And basically you were saying, well, exactly the same. There is no direct connection. The Google just doesn't count it, but obviously social media affect your ranking. Is it correct summarizing what you were saying?
It is, although as I noted, they may use social media to discover new content, which is different, as Mark pointed out. They don't use, in our opinion, and according to our tests, they don't use social media to increase the ranking of content. And remember, all those social media links are no follow. So there's no page rank can go through them.
So I think we want to emphasize, you kind of summarized my part of it, which is that, we've proven that Google wasn't lying. I've heard Googlers make that statement too. And then I've heard people out there say, that's code Google. They're just saying they're trying to deceive us. So we confirmed that, by our own testing, that it's likely that indeed that is the case. But I want to strongly emphasize what Eric shared, that that doesn't mean ignore social media as part of your SEO strategy at all. If you've got the right content and you're sharing it with the right audience on social media, we've proven it ourselves. You can build natural great links that build your SEO.
Yeah, but you're in a position of influencer already. You obviously people listen to what you're saying. As what you said.
Not my wife, but the other people.
Okay. Rest of us do. But for example, if you're not, how would you get there?
Well, it's a great question. For years, I've had a saying that I like to use with people, and it's a little uncomfortable for people to hear, but the saying is, be an expert or go home. I mean, you really don't have a choice. right? Because there is so much content being published in the market and so much happening in social media that if you don't have something valuable to contribute to the conversation, you won't get anything valuable back out of the network.
And then you have to be participating. You have to be likable. You have to be engaging. I mean, that's all the stuff everybody says, right? The part that nobody adds is what Eric just added. There's got to be, as I like to say it, there's got to be some there. You've got to have some substance to give out that people, there's a reason to listen to you. But then you also, to get people to listen to you, you have to build relationships. You have to be participating. You can't just be tweeting out links all day and expect that you're going to build an influential audience.
I have to be likable?
Yeah, Eric, we're working on that.
Oh, my goodness.
So basically, you're saying if you have nothing to say, doesn't matter whatever you do, it won't work. Just go home and that's it.
Yeah, it's really true. And you really, in your business, by the way, if you're a business owner, it doesn't necessarily have to be you that's the public-facing expert. You need to have someone working for you in that capacity and helping you with that.
Nowadays, very fashionable is influencer marketing, which is a lot of people understand as a stalking influencer up to the point the influencer say yes, whatever you say. Are you agree with that?
So no, influencer marketing is great, but it's all about relationship. You know, and again, the influencer is not going to care about you unless you're bringing value to them.
If I could just interject, I want to, because it's been a lot of discussion on social media this past week about influence marketing being dead. And when I investigated that, what they're talking about, they're not talking about the kind of influencers we're talking about. They're talking about buying, YouTube stars and celebrities and that sort of thing. And the fakery of that is coming through. What Eric is talking about, what we're talking about, is making real relationships with people who have genuine influence in your marketplace, people who are seen as authorities, people who other people listen to and follow what they say, and building a relationship with them so that they want to share what we share. They want to promote what we're doing.
Right, and no, it's absolutely right. And if you look at a typical market space, you can break market space into a famous bell curve, where at the beginning of the bell curve you have influencers and early adopters, and then you have the mass market of people, and then you have what you call the laggards at the end, right? The people who are influencers are at the very beginning of that curve, the early adopters and influencers. So when you're creating content where you're trying to get a lot of social shares and a lot of links, that's your audience. The early adopters and the influencers are your audience, not the mass market and not the laggards. Because the mass market and the laggards don't link. They don't social share. That's not what they do. The people who have influence that can help you expand your business, early adopters and the influencers.